And hello and welcome to the latest episode of the GW Basketball Insiders podcast. I am Liam O'Murchu alongside David Korn. Of course, let's just jump right into it. GW, since we last recorded, GW has beaten Rhode Island and lost to Duquesne and George Mason. David was at the George Mason game. Tough 2 overtime loss.
Was also at the Duquesne game.
Was also at the Duquesne game. There you go. And I've been at none of the games. So we're going to let David kind of jump into it here. Just kind of give me your initial thoughts on where the team stands and the most recent George Mason loss.
Yeah, so my big thing, especially on the last 2 losses, is I haven't really seen a lot of people doing this, but I'm not pressing a panic button. I'm not worried. I think they played pretty well against Duquesne. I think they played pretty well against George Mason. And I still think this is a top half of the A10 team that, as we've seen, is capable of beating anyone. My biggest takeaways, I know I kind of workshopped this, and you may have seen me talk about this online, but it's like Duquesne, it was a 1-point game for a lot of the second half. I think you lost by 6 at the end, but it was you were in that game the whole time. And you lost because Maximus Edwards, who was Duquesne's 9th man off the bench that game. Remember, 9th man. They had 8 players play before they went to Max Edwards off the bench. He scored, he had a way season high. I think he had like 23 that night.
Yeah.
And, that's why they won. You really held the rest of the team to a low scoring night. GW played well. They didn't score a ton, but again, they had a good game. Max Edwards has not the best game of his season. Pretty much anything else, and you win that game. So again, it's a game you would have liked to win, but Duquesne is looking like a surprise competitor after the rough non-con, kind of the same thing we saw last year. I think they're a very solid team. I think they're the deepest team in the Atlantic 10. And again, now that Max Edwards is looking like a real player for them, I think that gives them a whole nother element to have that like 6th man off the bench, which I think is, if Maximus Edwards is engaged, I think that role as the scorer off the bench is absolutely perfect for him.
Yeah,
and so
maybe they just needed him to get engaged this game for him to get engaged.
Yeah.
If he didn't hit those first 2 shots, I don't think we'd be talking about it in the same way because he's just such a streaky player. I think it helped that he hit his first 2 shots and then got into a rhythm, and GW kind of forgot to guard him a few times.
Yeah, and so I'm not worried about that one. Again, it was a former player who, as many people watching or listening to this know, had a rocky end to his tenure at GW, had a little bit of extra motivation, had some booing. So they lost that game against a really good Duquesne team. Like, fine, that doesn't change how I think about this team. And then George Mason, they lost in 2 OT when they not only, again, 2 OT. I don't really feel the need to get into the minutia of the officiating. If you're watching this on YouTube, scroll a few videos and go to the video Matt Maderno took at the press conference. Look on my Twitter, David_Korn4. Scroll down a few tweets to see some highlights of what Caputo said. You know how he felt about it. He was livid, especially on the final play of the second overtime. By the letter of the law, I counted 3 different shooting fouls on one sequence in a game-deciding play, and none were called. So again, not even counting the officiating. Again, George Mason, who's probably been the hottest and most surprising team of the season so far in the Atlantic 10, and had a great day. Jalen Haynes went nuts before he fouled out.
That defense of theirs is serious business.
Yeah, it is. And again, GW went step to step with them, and they did that with Gerald Drumgoole shooting 0 of 10 from 3.
Yeah.
One of those threes, again, I'm not trying to play like if this happened, whatever. You lost in 2 OT. If one of those threes goes in at any point in the game, you probably win. So it's like it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you would have liked these 2 games to be wins, but GW is not any sort of bubble, Yeah. I mean, there was an argument that they could be in double bye contention, and again, I think the A10 after like VCU is still kind of a mess, and so I think they very well could be still in double bye contention. And again, if they were, but it's like, if you're having an honest look at this team, you want good performances, and you don't want to be in the pillow fight. I don't think they're at risk of that yet. I think these performances have still been really promising. So these past 2 losses, yeah, they've stunk and they've been frustrating, and you'd love for them to be wins. But I think that if you look at where you are as a program, again, not to go all Caputo press conference-isms on everyone, but this is a really young team. I think they are ahead of schedule, which is tough to say in this world of college basketball where they might all transfer. But I do think, again, assuming you get some sort of roster continuity, I do think this team is ahead of schedule. I think there's a lot to be really psyched about and a lot of really awesome stuff that we've seen. And honestly, these two losses made me feel, based on the way their opponents have played and have continued to play, Duquesne and George Mason, I mean, I'm really, sort of encouraged by what I saw.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's, at least so far, they've been in every game. And that's been the case. I guess maybe if you look at the season as a whole, maybe the exception is that Kansas State game.
No, they were in it in the second half.
Yeah, no, they got back into it, which is really encouraging. And that's not something that you could have said last year or the year before, where like this, especially the conference, all these conference games have been really close. It's come down to the last few minutes. Not great for my blood pressure necessarily, but, certainly shows that this is a good team. And I think the most, maybe not most surprising, but like the most notable part of that is what they're good at this year. They were terrible at the last 2 years under Chris Caputo. Their defense is really good. Their defense is like, it's them, George Mason, and VCU have the best three defenses in the conference. Which when Caputo first kind of came over from Miami, he was the like defensive coordinator at Miami. And we were a little confused why the defense wasn't as good at GW. And like, I just remember there were.
I mean, I don't think I was very confused.
Well, yeah, the players weren't there, but it was like, okay, you brought over this guy, and he, like, his thing was defense, and now the defense is the worst in the conference. So, like,
well, I think a big part of it is this is Caputo's first year where it's all his guys, minus Keegan Hardy. Shout out Keegan Hardy, but where it's all his guys, and so, not saying James Bishop wasn't great. But
he's not a good defensive player.
Other than when he sunned Jung Lee and made him not be an NBA player, not a great defender. Yeah. And so sort of at least not having that one weaker spot. I mean, I think all the guards are very competent defenders, which is a big asset. As people who have, again, I'm assuming if you're watching or listening to us, you really watch most GW basketball games. You knew that Babatunde Stretch Akingbola really wasn't a great defender. Like, he picked up a lot of blocks, but he jumped on everything, could not really defend on the perimeter, and really was not a sort of capable starting center in the Atlantic 10. Yeah. And so having Castro, who I think has proven that he is the best GW center, I think maybe since the tournament years, I want to say.
Yeah. Definitely best since we've kind of come to GW basketball consciousness. I'm sure we could get people who are, more intimately familiar with the with GW history, GW basketball history to help us out there. But you sort of mentioned the guards there. Something they've been really good at is steals, and someone who has kind of led that has been Christian Jones. Him kind of being that first line, I guess, of defense and using these long arms, pestering the opposing point guard, or
his steals. He racks up steals. I think he had 7 against Duquesne. I didn't even realize. He is a pest.
Yeah, 52nd best steal percentage in the country. Sean Hansen, 56th. The thing that I love is how good the Sean Hansen and Rafael Castro are with their hands and like getting steals. Mm-hmm. That's really, I feel like it's really fun, and that's a really nice thing to have when you have your big men, kind of getting in on the action and getting steals. So I think that's a pretty big part of it too.
Yeah, I agree. This defense has been awesome. Top 5 in points allowed in the conference so far, which again we talked about this, but is not something that, it's almost become a running joke in the conference the past few years about how bad GW's defense was. So now that they have a legitimately good one, it is really exciting. But again, if you look up and down the roster, there really are, again, we talked about Sean Hansen. He does get a lot of steals. I'd say he's probably, the only real weak link on defense. Everyone else can kind of hold their own,
Mm-hmm. Who is this?
What?
Who are you talking about?
Sean Hansen as probably the only.
I think his defense has been better.
Yeah, better, but I still think he's probably a minus on that front.
Yeah, he's just not as quick. So, like, if they get a guard switched onto him, which happens more often than I'd like.
He's a tweener,
Yeah.
Not strong enough to take on the biggest centers. I don't think he went one-on-one with Jalen Haynes once.
Jalen Haynes is rotund, so he's a whole different thing.
Yes, that's the extreme of the strong centers in the Atlantic 10. But no, but he's you worry about him on smaller fours and you worry about him on bigger fives. So
yeah, and I don't love when he gets switched onto like a quick guard on like the top of the key because they kind of just blow by him. And it's clearly something that that has been. I mean, it's not like that's an uncommon thing for a big, but I've seen it a few times where it seems like it's purposeful that they're getting switches onto him.
Yeah, and I think that's going to happen less now that Buchanan is getting worked back in, which is something I also want to talk about. Because he looked great.
Yeah, he was 5 for 5 from the field. 2 for 2 from 3. My thing is, he looked really good. They weren't forcing. It wasn't like he was coming down the court with the ball every time.
This was the best I've ever seen him play off ball that game.
Yeah. So, like, how do you incorporate that? How do you get him more shots in that sort of thing? He should be taking more than 5 shots in a situation like that. Like, I get you need to find the balance between like giving him the ball every single possession and have him barreling towards the basket and him only taking 5 shots and making all of them.
I think it's all about finding the balance, and I think we're getting there. Because against Duquesne, he did try a lot of that, throwing himself through and did not have a single field goal. Against George Mason, he looked a lot more comfortable on his ankle, which was bothering him. He was pretty uneasy on it. He looked a lot more comfortable. And, what he did was incredibly effective. Very selective with the shots, took and made those open threes, was really cutting well to the rim. And I think part of it is just like continuing to do that. But also, like, he made his, literally with NIL, he made his money just relentlessly attacking the basket. So I think it's being more selective about when he does that, still doing it, making sure that the defender has it in their minds that he could still just sprint at you and you will get bowled over. But again, also seeding the ball to Christian Jones, having Hansen or Castro, feed him when he's cutting baseline or something like that. And also getting buckets that way. It's all about making sure, diversifying his game. And as he continues to do that, it will look more effective and be more effective.
And I know that's something the coaching staff has been basically looking to do every game, tweaking slightly every game, depending on who they're playing, is how do we get him the ball in the best spots?
But this George Mason game showed that he could operate effectively off ball, which I think is so important because, again, now it's finding that balance. But we showed that he can do it, which is so important because you didn't really know if he could still be effective as a guy off the ball, and he showed he can. And now it's about just working in both sides of that game.
Yeah, absolutely. The 3-point shooting was, but I mean, at this point, anytime he takes a 3-pointer, I'm like, oh, and then he makes it, and I'm like,
but again, I don't think it's all about just having the defender respect that part of his game because, like, again, he went 2 for 2. That's great. Now in the next game against UMass and then against St. Louis, when the ball is swung to him on the perimeter, the defender has to collapse. They cannot give up an open 3. That's ridiculous. So they have to collapse on him, and that's when he can blow by because they aren't sort of playing back on him on their back feet. Like if you're going forward on him, it makes it that much easier for him to maybe do a pump fake and go. Or again, just when he has that space and that opens up the floor, the sort of space under the basket, more easy for him to get his points that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Helps with the spacing, all that different stuff. I mean, speaking of 3-point shooting, you mentioned Gerald Drumgoole. He's 2 for 26 in his last 3 games. He's we knew he was a streaky shooter, but like, man, that's frustrating how streaky he's been.
So the tough thing with this is it's like positionally, we don't have another 3.
Yeah.
Like that, again, not to go all computer press conference on you here, but like the issue with this roster construction is even with Garrett Johnson, you were thin on the wing.
Right.
So
yeah, Garrett Johnson was very much not expendable at all.
Yeah. So what I think, especially if Buchanan's making more of these threes, what I think the response to this is you yank Drumgoole and go jumbo with Jones or JaCoy, Autry, and then Buchanan, Hansen, and Slim, and Rafael Castro.
Yeah.
And I think that's the answer to that. And you go big. Capito's done in spurts. He had to go that way in double overtime when Drumgoole fouled out. But I think that's what you have to do if he's that ineffective, because he really did. Again, I don't think he necessarily shot you out of that game. Again, you were in double overtime, but
10 is so many. Like after 7, stop taking threes. You know what I mean?
Yes, but again, I don't think he has that much else to his game.
He got to the basket well as the game went on. He got to the basket much better as the game went on.
But those are all like predicated on like defenders. Again, like that's all because they're if they know he's not going to shoot, which I think they'll realize. I think if he gets cold again, I think you have to yank him and try something else. Whether it's going extra small, putting Autry at the 3, which I don't think they really want to do for extended periods of time, or going extra big and putting Buchanan there. I think that's what you will sort of have to do if he is. And, I think this team has shown that they're too good to just sort of you just need to put different guys out there. And I think Buchanan is good enough to sort of play the 3 if he needs to. And I wouldn't hate seeing more of that. I know I've been saying this for about 2 years now, but I want to see more of him sliding down because I think that could be an absolute matchup nightmare for teams.
Yeah. I mean, what it comes to is you just need to hit a certain amount of 3-pointers. You can't what was their game against Rhode Island when they were 4 for 27 from 3-point range? It's like that is very much an anomaly. You're not going to be able to do that in almost any other game. Like no matter where the threes come from, they just need to hit more threes. And they've played really well. What was it against Dayton? Part of the reason they won by 20 is because they shot, 15 for 31 from 3. Yep. Whoever it is, you got to find someone to make threes, whether it's Trey Autry, whether it's Christian Jones, whether Ty Bevins had a couple from the, corner threes that he hit. It's like you just have to find these 3-pointers somewhere. I know that they're not, we've talked about this. They're just not a great 3-pointing shooting team, but there's a certain amount that you just have to make. You can't be below 30%. Like you got to find a way to figure that out. So, I just wish they had a little more consistency from 3, but what's the expression that Chris Capito loves to say? Water will find its level.
Yes.
So I'm just sometimes afraid that the water level is lower than we all would like it to be. So anyway, should we talk about JaCoy Hutchinson?
Yeah. I mean,
he has been bad this year. It's really
I had him as a fringe all-conference player heading into the year.
He was it's kind of funny because last year I remember asking him this question in a press conference. He was playing so well during that 13-game losing streak.
Yeah.
And I remember asking him JaCoy, what are the emotions of you're kind of breaking into being a good college player as your team is losing 10 straight games? How do you deal with that? And now they're, obviously they've lost the last 2 games, but they look better than they did, at basically any point last year. And JaCoy is now struggling. So it's kind of the roles have reversed. He just doesn't look confident. He just badly needs something to go his way, hit a few shots or whatever.
Yeah, but I don't think he's really going to get that run. Christian Jones has been playing so well on both sides of the ball. Trey Autry has been playing really well. I don't really see a spot for him.
Yeah.
And I think what we're going to
11 minutes, the fewest he's played in any game.
What I think we're going to see these next few weeks, you mentioned it with the threes. JaCoy Hutchinson is not a guy who looks like he's going to give you threes. I know he was a good shooter last year, but this year he's shooting 19.3%. And another guy who played against George Mason for just 5 minutes, but coming off an injury, Trey Moss, shooting 25% from three this year, who I've been pretty disappointed by what Moss has given this year. I think both of those guys are going to be fringe rotate, or JaKoy will get backup point guard minutes, but I'm not sure Trey Moss works his way back in as a full rotation player, because Ty Bevins has been a much better defender than Moss ever showed he was this year. Bevins is making corner threes, moving the ball, and playing really well for a true freshman. And, I think Capito is going to tighten up this rotation, and I think it'll squeeze Trey Moss out. I think Autry has earned a spot in the starting lineup. I don't think there really is a world in which Trey Moss starts over Trey Autry anymore.
Yeah.
And I think Moss is going to really struggle to get minutes, and I think JaKoy is going to sort of be stuck around this 10 to 15 minute range as pretty much just the backup point guard.
Yeah. The thing that Trey Moss does that I think is useful and helpful, but isn't something that other players can't replicate, that other players can't do, is he gets to the basket so well. He's it was something that I talked about on this podcast earlier this year that GW is missing, is getting a guard, driving to the basket, and whatever that looks like. That is a part of his game, maybe more so in the non-conference, that he was providing that not many other people were.
But I think Christian Jones has shown that he can also
Jones has shown he can do that. Trey Autry can do that.
Yeah, both of them have had some really acrobatic finishes at the rim.
Yeah. What the heck was I looking for? The Trey Autry, think of him as a three-point shooter. 85th in the country in 2-point percentage. And then 60th in 2-point percentage. Not great podcast.
Yeah, okay. But Moss plays 20 minutes a game and has 7.6 points. Like that's
no. I'm with you, and I'm curious to see to what degree he is reintegrated. I definitely think that is something to watch over the next few games. I don't think he was fully healthy.
He was not. No, he tried to play, realized it didn't make sense to keep going, and then sat. But what I've noticed is you saw that the team missed Darren Buchanan these past few games. I don't see them really missing Trey Moss.
Yeah, that's fair.
I've seen Christian Jones and Trey Autry, and then Ty Bevins, I think, really step up and show that he really wasn't bringing much to the table.
Yeah, the one thing you can't have is, and this has gotten better since non-conference, you cannot afford to have Trey Moss going out there and just bombing threes and missing, going 1 for 6 or 2 for 7 like he did against Illinois State and Louisiana, or even an 0 for 3 kind of hurts. So if he's on the floor, I don't want him just jacking up 3-pointers all the time, because he's just not a very good 3-point shooter. So how does this team stop getting so many of their shots blocked? Is that just something they're bad at? Or it seems like 1 out of every 2 transition opportunities, it's their shot gets blocked without the defender jumping off the court.
Yeah, the Duquesne game was tough. There were a lot of those.
David Dixon was really good. So credit to him. But it's just so frustrating. I feel like I see it coming from a mile away. I'm like, okay, this is about to get blocked.
I think that's the youth.
Yeah.
I think that is just something that young players who are still adjusting to the college game don't realize yet, how much bigger and stronger and faster these guys are. And, I think that's just something that will develop over time. I don't think there's a way to fix that.
Yeah. I think it's just maybe a judgment thing. And the one person who's been almost too aggressive to the other side and is pulling out of transition opportunities is Dion Nessa. He's slowing it down to a certain point where I'm okay, well, you could not just completely stop and let the entire defense get back. But whatever, I'm sure they'll figure it out, and this will be something we forget about.
Well, Dion Nessa has the least experience of anyone on this team. So
yeah, that's true. Young and injury prone, so he didn't play a bunch before GW. Let's see. Should we talk a little bit about Sean Hansen? What do we think?
I love the offense. I love what he brings on offense. He keeps the ball moving.
I don't love these risky passes he makes. He had one late in the game where he tries
that one was
jam a pass in, and I'm it's fun and good when clearly there's some sets that they design where they like have a guard cutting to the basket, and he kind of feeds them from the top of the key or the elbow or whatever.
I think Sean, again, I think we spend too much time thinking about Hansen. I think we kind of had these very high expectations for him. I think he is a quality Atlantic 10 backup big.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice that he can shoot.
Yep, it's great that he can shoot. I don't think you get that from a lot of backup centers in this conference. He's a great backup big, fun, versatile offensive skill set, and he stepped up to start when Buchanan went down, and that was great. But he's a backup center. He's a backup big.
Yeah. I think he's better off when he's not, starting and playing, however many minutes the game. He's good kind of when you can get him in certain kind of random situations and stuff like that. Get him out there. Oh, they leave him open for three. Oh, he knocked down 2 of his 4 3-pointers. Great.
Do you know where I think he could have a really big game? If he gets some minutes at the 4 against SLU. I think that could be a really good matchup for him. SLU's defense is atrocious. I know they've looked a bit better, but I think that's kind of fraud. Yeah. I think as long as he doesn't have to go anywhere near guarding Robbie Avila, if he can stick at that 4, get some minutes alongside Castro. Again, GW goes jumbo against that. I think he could cook there, and I think you could see an easy 10-15 off the bench in that game.
Yep, I'm going to be at that game, so let's link up. This weekend.
I love it.
So there you go.
We need to get some after the game. We should go get some Dribblin' George's on tap at Tonic.
Yes. I will be 100% drinking Dribblin' George during the game. And definitely, I wonder, is it better?
If anyone is listening and wants to hang out with me and Liam after the game at Tonic, I'm saying this now, about an hour after the game, after the press conferences, I will be there. And
we're going
to wants to buy us a Dribblin' George. Ryan Palaio's already said he'll buy me a Dribblin' George because I drove him down to George Mason.
That's cool.
So come hang out with us. This is an official invitation.
Yeah, this is
to 27 minutes of us rambling.
Yeah, GW Basketball Insiders social.
It'll just be Abe. It'll
be Abe and Scott if he's free, maybe. Let's see. Kind of getting to the end here.
Should we wrap up with our stuff about how we get more people at these games?
Yeah. Can we talk about the execution out of timeouts first?
Yeah. What's your take?
I'm disappointed. It's not good enough. And I sit there and I watch these games and I'm like, man, I wish that they were more aggressive in taking timeouts or more willing to take timeouts. And then like the last possession of maybe it was regulation or maybe it was the first overtime, they had multiple timeouts in both instances. I think they had 3 in regulation and 2 in overtime, and they just let it run. And I'm like, why wouldn't you just take a timeout?
No, I kind of get it. I think at this level of basketball, I think you're a lot better off not letting the defense get set up.
Yeah.
So I kind of disagree with that. I'm going to push back on that. I know what you're talking about, and
they call timeouts in similar situations, and then they like screw it up and like pass the ball into like mess it up, and like the execution is terrible. So I'm like,
yeah, but again, I think I do generally think the offense is at the advantage if you're just going, especially if you have the personnel group in that you're comfortable with. I am against taking timeouts there because I think it's much easier to score like that and sort of score without necessarily drawing up a play than it is for a team to sort of get their best defenders in, really get set and have to work, out of an inbounds play for that. I am comfortable with Caputo sort of running with it there. Again, hasn't worked. Didn't work against AU. Didn't work here. But
what's that Arrested Development thing? It's like, didn't work for them, but maybe it'll work for us or something along those lines. Whatever. I think maybe more generally my take is that I've been really disappointed by the late game execution. Like, can you think of a game, like a late game execution in the last 2 years other than the James Bishop VCU game where GW has like hit a big shot and then won the game?
Do we count the Javier Longarica buzzer beater against Boston University in
No.
2019?
I was talking about the last 2 years. Jeez. I wasn't even there. I just hadn't even decided I was going to GW yet.
Real sickos will remember that was my first ever game doing play-by-play for WRGW, and I couldn't even get the words out when it happened. It was so bad. I know it was maybe the worst call that anyone's ever had, and I'm so glad that we did not have the ability to record our games back then because it was truly atrocious.
Yeah. Also, that late game, Rafael Castro at the end of it's like, oh my god, he missed both. As soon as he missed the first one badly, I was like, oh, geez.
You knew, yeah. No, and that sucked. And again, but I don't want to harp on free throws because what do you say about that? What do you do?
I've never understood teams that are bad at free throws. Not that this team is actually terrible at free throws, but
no, but it's one of those things where it's I just don't find it
you're getting paid to play basketball. You should be a better free throw shooter. That's my smooth brained take about free throws. It's
yes, no, and that's not wrong, but it's again, that's not something I find myself really losing sleep over because I don't see that there's a quick solution to that. So it's
the water will find its level as
yep.
To say. So the schedule does get easier the next few games.
Yeah, I think this is going to be hammer the over on this one. I think GW is going to be really frustrated about 2 bad losses. I think the UMass defense is atrocious.
UMass on a 2-game winning streak.
Oh yeah, Fordham and LaSalle.
No, that Fordham game was off the rails. I don't know if you were able to watch any of it. It was.
I went to the press conferences, drove home, and then watched a full period of overtime.
Well, the thing is, the game was slow in the first place. It was by the once the GW game ended, there was still 6 minutes or something left in the UMass Fordham regularly.
Yeah. So, no, it was crazy. But again, we don't need to harp on that. Liam, we've been going a while. Yeah, let's wrap up the show. Give some quick ideas. I want one idea from you on how to get more students at the Smith Center, and one idea about how to get non-students, so just members of the non-student community. So just DC, Virginia, Maryland, DMV residents, to get them in the building. One idea for each.
I don't know. I give up. What do we do? Just kidding. I have no idea. So I think that to get non-students there, I think the alumni outreach, because there should be a little better. GW has a humongous alumni base of I'm thinking of 35-year-old man with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, or even 8-year-old and a 6-year-old.
So Jake Sherman.
Yeah, exactly.
He's there at most games with his kid. Yeah.
Yeah. How many people are there in that position? And you market it to them. You say, okay, we're gonna kids eat free today or whatever it is. And I know that they've done some of this stuff. But it's there needs to be a way to get these, especially these people that are now going into are now having a family that were there in 05, 06, or even to a certain extent, during 2014, whatever. I think that there would be a desire if these people were reached out to get to GW basketball games. It's right next to a metro. It's it's in a good spot. It's a nice place to watch a basketball game, but I just don't think enough people care. Maybe more people will care if they win, but I think there was a certain amount of shock after the Duquesne game or during the Duquesne game of well, where are all the people? Where are all the students? Where are all the this? It's, of course, all of these people. Oh, where are all the students? It's okay, well, there's more students there than there are non-students. So the non-students.
So my take on this: I spent worst summer of my life, working in minor league baseball.
That's what I've heard. Yep.
I know I've talked to you offline about this.
No, I'm just saying everyone has awful experiences with minor league baseball.
But what I learned there is that whenever they had empty seats, they would give them away to the community for free. So they knew every seat was filled, and these people who they got in for free were buying concessions, and if they had a good time, they would convert them into a paying customer for the future.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it.
The upper bowl on the baseline is, I've never seen more than a handful of people sitting in that. Find all of these youth basketball programs, all of these boys and girls clubs in DC, any sort of group, all right, just have some outreach person give them 50 tickets, all right? Say, this is for you guys. Figure out who wants them. We would love to have you. Free.
Yeah.
Get them there. Show that it's fun. Show what college basketball is all about, the family-friendly atmosphere that it is, because it really is. Like, kids can run around. They can get on the Jumbotron. You know, you can scream. You can do whatever you want. You can get a hot dog. Like, it's really a fun place if you're if you have like a sports-loving kid. There's really nothing better than that.
Yeah.
And so
I agree.
My biggest thing is just find groups within the community to give these tickets away for free. You could convert them into paying customers. You build goodwill in the community. It is a win-win. It is of no, you do not lose money giving these tickets away for free. They will most likely still buy something when they get there. And they would have gone unsold anyway. You're not selling out. You know, you don't need to worry about a paying customer missing out on a ticket. You can still keep, 500 seats ready for walk-ups if you want and still be fine and still do this. So that's my big thing. Just give the tickets away.
Yeah. How do you get the students to games though? Like it's becoming pretty clear to me that these students don't care. They don't feel a connection to the basketball team. No one goes to GW because they're like, oh, well, I want to go watch the basketball games. You go to GW so you can be in DC and do all this different stuff. Like that's, I don't know. I don't know what you do. You try and give away a scooter. That hasn't worked.
So my big thing about this is, again, so I was a student at GW for 4 years. I met a lot of sports fans, and most of those sports fans did not go to the basketball games.
They almost looked down their nose at oh, well, yeah. I only watch Auburn and Duke and like that.
Yeah, and so it's funny now that Auburn's being grouped with. But anyway, but so my thinking is that like the people don't take GW basketball seriously. People think of it as a joke, and it's gotten to that point because of the lack of success. So I think the biggest one, again, this is simple, like not sure, but make a tournament, make an NCAA tournament appearance. Yeah. People cannot say that again if they are on that national stage. Even, God forbid, win a game. I think that changes instantly because I think people will have their opinions changed. But in the meantime, while we're still working up to that as a program, I think what you have to do is, really push the tournament appearances that you have had, bring those teams back, put stuff up on the Jumbotrons being like, remember these greats or whatever, show highlights of them, beating number 1 Virginia when they did that, show highlights of them against Duke in the tournament, stuff like that. And, I think you really need more than just the posters of Yuta Watanabe at Hellwell, where you do intramural basketball. And you need more than that. Again, show off your former NBA players and guys who've played in the Olympics. Make a big deal about that. Find ways to get it through these people's heads that GW basketball is a serious program and that there's legitimate, again, even if the record doesn't show it, this is still high-level college basketball. And I think that's the biggest way you change people's minds and make it something that people take seriously.
I think you got to make sure these people know that there's games. There's this assumption that all of these students they're going to come to the game just because they know.
So they just hired someone. Abe was telling us that they just hired someone who's going to take a bigger role in that. And I think that's important. And I think outreach is important. But I think people, because I don't think you're going to convert the poli-sci hill turn.
No.
I don't think you're necessarily going to convert that person, but I do think you can convert the big NFL, NBA fan who, again, normal guy, probably in a frat. I do think you can convert that guy. And I think the biggest way is getting it through these people's heads that this is high-level D1 college basketball. It's not like we're Radford or William and Mary.
We lost to
Radford a few years ago. We did lose to Radford. Shout out Jamie and Christian for scheduling that. Away game at Radford. Maybe
home and home with Radford. Duh.
Yeah, great. That makes a lot of sense. The GW alumni community in
I don't even know
the Virginia.
It is in the middle. Virginia. Yeah, it is in the middle of nowhere. I think the big thing is you have to pepper these students every single time there's a home game. There should be signs, and like coaches should be out, players should be out, trying to get students to these games. Like, I appreciate what they're trying to do with like posting a video on their Instagram, but like
if people don't follow the Instagram, it doesn't matter.
Damn Instagram. Like,
yeah, no, I agree. And I think having players do stuff like that. I know Caputo did this a bit last year when Abe was president of Delt. Again, we're talking a lot about Abe this episode, but
yeah, Abe episode.
But Caputo would bring players to their chapter meetings. Like, that's awesome. Do that more.
He clearly is like interested in like finding a way to like get more people there. I just, he's also busy coaching a basketball team. So
yeah, no, and I don't think it's on him to do this, but it's like, can have a different player every week. Like, do stuff like, I don't know, just visibility is a big thing. But I think for me, the biggest thing is changing the perception of GW basketball from what people consider sort of a joke and not serious to something that people realize, is better basketball than pretty much is the best basketball that you will find at a school that isn't a high major.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, I think we should wrap this up. I'm supposed to meet my family at a dim sum restaurant, and my sister's now texting me through the Do Not Disturb, asking me where I am. So maybe it's
quick
time.
Before you go, what's your go-to dim sum?
I don't really know. I don't go to a lot of like dim. I don't know. I can't tell you. I'll let you know when.
If you need tips, send me the menu. I'll give you my suggestions. I'm a big dim sum guy.
I will. My sister's big into the Asian foods. I'm sure.
I like the shrimp shumai. That's a good one.
Shrimp shumai. Okay, noted. All right.
Oh, and anything red bean, very good.
Okay, noted, and appreciated. All right. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of GW Basketball Insiders. And
we once again failed to keep it at 30 minutes. We'll get it one day.
We're never, ever going to keep it. The day we keep it at 30 minutes, it's going to be like the worst episode ever. We're going to be like, we have nothing to talk about.
Oh, 12-game losing streak.
Yeah, we could go for an hour and a half on 12-game losing streak. Anyway. All right. Sounds good.
Have a good one, guys. Thank you for listening as always.